Welcome to the Veil Between Lives. We're honored you're here as we explore consciousness, the unseen, and the mysteries beyond ordinary experience. I'm Susan, joined by my co-host, Em. Hi, Em.
Hi, and a warm welcome to Ken Ross. In 1996, a near-fatal kayaking accident led Ken into a remarkable near-death experience. During his time beyond the physical world, he encountered a profound life reveal and a deep sense of peace that forever changed his understanding of life, love, and what may lie beyond.
So excited for this conversation today. Welcome, Ken.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Em, for having me.
We can start with a little bit about what life was like before your near-death experience and how is that different now?
I'm thinking back because that old self is no longer really there. I was 37 when this happened, and at the time I thought, the world was my oyster and it was all about me and all about what I wanted in life. And I felt like um, I was doing things for other people, but not for myself. And at that time, I felt I had a lot of hard relationship issues with my wife that I was with at the time. I don't need to get into that, but um, anyway, I decided that it was best that we would separate. And so I made that decision, and I felt really like I finally made a decision. And I felt so freeing, like the world was going to open up to me. And I felt just this elation that I didn't feel before. Like all these new possibilities were going to open up for me. And I was selfish, and I was also very very critical of myself, and I didn't like criticism very much. I took criticism very hard, and I felt very guilty and ashamed being raised Catholic. So I had all those issues, but at the time before this near drowning, I had just a sense that I finally made a decision for myself, and I was going to be selfish for myself. So that's where I was just before the accident. And I can remember as I drove up there with my friend, I remember sticking my hand out the window and just going like this. You know how you do with your hands? And it just felt like I had wings, and I was just beginning to learn how to fly. And I was just, and my friend likes country music, and we were just singing country music songs, and I was shouting out the window, and I just felt so like very, I felt very high, like almost like I was drunk, but I wasn't. I didn't drink, so you know. But I just remember that feeling of, I just felt like I had wings and I was getting ready to fly. Of course, little did I know I would be in 2 days.
Right? Surprise! Today's the day!
Surprise!
Yeah,
Yeah.
why don't you walk us through the next, what happens next? What happened that day?
Well, we got up there on a Friday night, drove like it was 12, 13 hours, and we paddled the Saturday, and the Sunday we were paddling the river again, and then we would come back home. But on Sunday, the river had gone up a little bit, and so as we came down, I came to a place that had a pretty nasty hole, and I ended up getting stuck in that hole. And it's got a bad hydraulic, and so it circulates back. And this is a type of hole that when you get into, if the hydraulic is the backwash is further away from where the water pours over, and it goes further out where you get stuck in it, and you really literally can't get out. You just keep
Right.
recirculating. So anyway, I got stuck in that hole, and um, I tried everything I could to get out of that hole. Everything that I was taught, everything I learned. And I've been kayaking for some time, and I considered myself a very expert kayaker, and um, and I just couldn't get out of it. And I was in my boat, and I was struggling to get my breath. And the way you surf or pour over, you're on your edge, so your head's below the water. And so you got to tilt your head up and scroll like that to get air. And then you go back down and you scroll up, get air. And you can't do that for very long before you get super, super tired. And so I did that a few times, probably 4, 5 times. And then I realized I was going to get it completely exhausted.
Mm.
And so I decided to come out of my boat knowing that I still had some energy that I would have to self-rescue myself. And I came out of my boat, and then people started on the shore, started throwing throw ropes to me. And I could see them throwing, and I'm trying to grab them. And then I'd go down in the water and I'd get tumbled. And when I got tumbled, it was like being, if you've ever been at the beach and a big wave comes over you and knocks you down, and then it just tumbles you along the bottom, and you don't know which way's up or down or sideways or whatever. And you feel like you're being dragged along and you're never going to get a breath of air again. You're going to drown. That was the feeling I had. I was panicking. Each time I went and recirculated, that was happening. I'd get tumbled, go down, it'd get dark, not knowing if I was going to get a breath. And then, my life jacket would kind of pop me back up, and I'd get a breath and then go back and keep doing that. And eventually I got attached to my boat again. My boat was still in the hole. So eventually I grabbed my boat, and I can see them throwing throw ropes, and they were throwing, and one landed really close to me, and I went to reach to grab it, and it disappeared. And then eventually my boat left the hole, but I stayed in the hole, and now I continued doing this again. And I was panicking, and I was full of fear, and I was just like, I'm going to drown. Oh my gosh. And I'm trying to get breath. And then something just in me just said, if today is the day I'm going to die, I do not want to die with fear in my heart. And as soon as I had that thought, I found myself looking down at the river. So looking down at the hole, I was like above the hole looking down, but I wasn't on the bank. I was like above the bank, but looking down at the hole. And I remember thinking, wow, how did I get here? What's going on here? And I could see all the way down one side of the river and all the way the other. And my clarity of vision was just enhanced. I mean, it was just like super enhanced and super like aware. It was like this awareness. And then I noticed a paddler that I knew paddle in his canoe, and he checked to see about the hole. He decided that he was going to run the main hole, and he ran it. He got stuck in it. He started turning over and rolling back up, and he was in a canoe, so it's more, my boat was like maybe about 7 foot. His boat was probably about 14 foot, so quite a bit longer. Well, anyway, he ended up getting out of the hole, and I was just watching him do that. And then after he got out of the hole and went down, the next thing I remember was I wasn't looking at the river anymore. I was just looking at like blankness, but it was not dark. It was this blank screen kind of thing. And then I started reliving my life from the time I was born to the time I was then at 37. But I was reliving it in every moment, every thought, every action, everything I did. I mean, I'm talking everything. I'm not just talking, oh, something happened this day or that. No, everything that happened that day, I got to experience it, and everything the next day, and everything. I mean, how I felt, everything. And I was experiencing from the point of view of what I didn't do well. And it didn't feel very good. But to get a better understanding of that, I would stop that viewing, and wherever I stopped it, I could relive that moment, how I affected this person or how my actions affected other people. And I got to feel how it felt for me, and I also got to feel how it felt for that person, and how it felt for everyone else involved. And how that felt was it just that action rippled out to the universe. So it not only affected me and the person directly, but it also affected our encounters with anybody else. So I just got to see how that played out. I mean, to an extent of just, you know, how it just went way out. And I wasn't too proud of what I did on some of these things. I don't need to go into those; those are personal. But in the end of that, I did a few of those viewings, and in the end of that, I went, "Oh my gosh, I could have done better. I could have done better. I could have been kinder. I could have been more compassionate. I could have been more loving and understanding." And boy, wow, next time I'll do better, But there was nobody there to judge me and say, "Yeah, you should have done better. You should have." No, it was me that judged my life in that review, in that sense of what I could have done better. If there was no judgment, it was just like where I could have done better. But it wasn't like you did wrong. It wasn't like right or wrong. It was just, this is where you could have done better. And then all of a sudden, I found myself reviewing my life, but this time from a point of view of what I did do well and all the things that I choose to be kind when I had an opportunity to be kind, or when I choose a loving word to somebody that needed a loving word. And then at the same time, I got to experience what it was like for them and me, and then how it rippled out and how it affected the world. And I mean, it was just amazing that in both those viewings, what I ended up remembering is that the things that I thought were important in my life were not. Like if I had a good job, or I had a new car or a house, if I've traveled all over the world, if I had a good partner, you know, if I just had this and this and that, none of that mattered. None of it. All those things that I thought mattered didn't matter. It wasn't that important. But what was important was like how well I treated this person that needed help. Did I choose to ignore this person? If this person needed a help across the street, let's say, they always say help the old lady across the street. Well, a lot of times we see that, but we just ignore it. We just walk away. But where you choose to actually say, I'm going to take a minute here to help this person walk across the street. And that is such a miracle. I mean, it is such a miracle. People, if you can get a life review and to understand that, you would understand how important that is. I mean, it is such a blessing. And if you can do that just one time in your life, you succeeded. So, so I reviewed it in that sense. And when I was done reviewing it, I thought, wow, I have loved well. I really did love well. I loved myself and loved others also. And so I thought, if today is the day I'm going to die, today I can do that because I've loved well. So it's okay for me to go. And as soon as I had that thought, I found myself back in my body. And I remember thinking, okay, I don't have fear in my heart anymore. It's okay for me to go. And I put up my hands to God and I said, God, I am ready to go. Now, from the time I had that thought of, I don't want to die with fear in my heart, to the time I did this was like a second, just a second. I mean, I had the thought, I don't want to have fear in my heart. Boom. Okay, I'm ready to go. But when I had my hands up and was saying I'm ready to go, I didn't feel any water pushing me. It was totally peaceful. It was totally calm. And I just felt a great peace come over me. And I just let go. And when I let go and I said, okay, God, I'm ready to go, then I found myself floating in a black void, just floating. And I'm looking around and it's all black. I don't know where I am. I don't know what happened to me. I'm thinking, am I dead? If I'm dead, am I in heaven? Am I in hell? Am I in purgatory? because I was raised Catholic. And so I thought, well, you either go to heaven or you go to hell or you go to purgatory. Those are the three options. And obviously there was no pearly gates there. St. Peter wasn't welcoming in. And obviously the devil wasn't there. It wasn't saying, come with me. And so my only conclusion was that, oh, I must be in purgatory. I'm not ready to go to heaven yet, but that's good because I'm not going to hell. And so I'm just floating there thinking, what is this? What's going on? And then this voice came over and said, now this voice was not only words, but thoughts and images. So I'm going to try to speak it in what they were trying to communicate to me. So I'll put it in words. So it was more telepathic. And the voice said, this is not heaven, this is not hell, and this is not purgatory. It's a transition. You've had an earthly experience and you left quickly. And now you're going to be in this transition that you're in. And what we want you to do is let go of that which you hold on to. And I thought, what do you mean by that? And so I'm in my mind, I'm like, I just answered them, what do you mean by that? And they repeated it. We want you to let go of that which you hold on to. And they stressed we, not I, but we. And I was thinking about it for, it seemed like a few seconds. And then the image came to me of when years ago, when I was younger, I would say between the years of 18 and 21, I used to leave my body quite a bit. And in one of those experiences, I left and I wanted to understand who I was truly. And so they showed me who I was. And that was that I was light. That's all I was. I was light. That's what they showed me. But when I saw my light, it had little specks of holes in it, of darkness. And some were lighter, some were really dark, some were big, some were the size of a $50. But there was a lot of light, but there was speckled with all these little dots of darkness where the light wasn't shining through. And then I also noticed on my chest, it was like this black, like zigzag scar down my chest with like two suture lines across it. And it was really, really black and dark. And after I had that experience, I realized that was, back then I realized that was where I was holding on to my fears, my beliefs that weren't allowing the light to come through. So, then I thought back to that, and then I came back to where I was in the void, and I said, oh, do you mean like when you showed me who I was and that I was light, and those little darknesses and the fear and all those beliefs I was holding on, do you mean let go of those things? And I mean, it was like a multitude of chorus of folks screaming like, he got it. He got it. Yeah, they were all like, I was just, they were all just like clapping up, jumping and down. Oh my God, he got it. He got it. He figured it out. Oh my God. They were all so happy that I figured it out. And I felt like a little kid, that I did something right or something, or something. I got it, I got the understanding. And so I said, okay, I'll let go of those. And so as I let go of those things, I started to expand, and I started to feel like I was being healed, completely healed of any fear, anxiety, anything that didn't let the light shine. And I just was expanding and expanding. And the more I expanded, the more blissful I felt, the more peaceful I felt. And I felt so joyful. So it was just elation of joy. And it was so blissful. And eventually I got to the point where I let go of everything. And then I found myself just being in this black void. But now the black void didn't seem small. it felt like it extended to infinity and beyond. There was no end to it. And I was everything of that blackness. And that blackness was also, I was this individual unit of consciousness. But I was everything. And then that blank void, it felt like that was my blank canvas that I got to create whatever I wanted to create. It was there for me to create. And whatever I created in this space would be loved and appreciated. And that was a sense I've got. But at the time, I didn't want to create anything because I was experiencing what it was like when I was first created. And so it was like, oh, I'm an individual unit of consciousness. And now I have a free will to go out and explore. And so my core nature, my core being is joy, blissfulness, peace, and go out and do whatever you need to do. We will love it all. And so I was just reveling in that experience because it was such a beautiful experience. And then I noticed in the distance, there was like this change of light in the void. It was almost like the first light in the morning. And I thought, well, that's different. I wonder what that is. So I went to go explore that. And when I got there, as I getting there, it got lighter and lighter and lighter to all of a sudden I found myself standing in front of this white force field made out of like clouds, and it was oscillating. And the clouds weren't moving like this, they were moving like this, and I could see through it, but not clearly. But I could see that there was some place on the other side of this force field, this veil. And it had a hill and it had a path, and I could see the colors, but the colors are muted. I remember one hill, it was all yellow and the other one was all maroon. And I could see off in the distance there was these buildings, and I'm in construction. So I'm like, oh, those are weird looking buildings. I've never seen any buildings like that, but they looked more like buildings made out of light. They weren't made out of wood or brick. It felt more like a light. And I was just looking at this thinking, wow, I wonder what this place is. And then down the path, like a dozen beings came down the path, and they just stood right in front of me, right on the path, right, like left and right of me. And as they came closer and stood there, I could sense that they knew me and I knew them. And it felt like they were going to welcome me home. It felt like it was going to be this huge welcoming party. And these are the people here to greet me. And so then I thought, oh, wow, I just have to go through this veil and then I'll be home. And the other thing that I felt that was different than before this was that I felt love from them. I felt this feeling of love, this connection, this feeling of love. And so I thought, oh, I just have to go through the veil and then I'll be home. And as I was ready just to get through that veil, this voice came over again and said, it's not your time. You have to go back. There are still things you have to do. And this voice was one of truth, of love, of wisdom, of understanding. And it felt greater than I had the knowledge to know. It just felt like whatever it was, whoever it was, I just knew it to be the truth. And that it was spoken in total love. And so I didn't question it. And at that time, I didn't even remember that I was Ken. I didn't even remember there was an earth. I didn't remember anything other than I was just being me, being joyful, blissful, peaceful. And I had no memory, no understanding of anything but that. It was almost like being born, and then they're going to, oh, no, you can't come to heaven yet or whatever. You have to go down and experience the earthly plane to start learning. It was it was almost like that. And I had no understanding what the earthly plane was at this time when this voice told me to go, I had to go back. So of course I agreed to it, not knowing what I was getting myself into. And when I said, yeah, okay, I will, whatever you say, I'll do, I'll go back, whatever that means. And when I said that, I found myself like, it was just like this rush of just like the whole universe, that expansion that I felt was being squeezed down into this vessel. And it was so painful and so, oh my gosh, it was so suffocating. It felt like I was going to suffocate to death and like restrained. And not only that, but all those things that I just let go of came rushing back. And then I came back and boom, I'm zapped back in my body. And I remember just thinking, I was trying to communicate to that being that said that and said, I made a mistake. Send me back. I don't want to be here. This is too hard. Send me back. But I didn't hear anything back. And so now I'm experiencing my body, the pain, the anguish, all those fears, beliefs, all those things that I have. And not only that, my body hurt and I couldn't breathe very well. And I opened my eyes and the world didn't look the same. All of a sudden, everybody was beams of light. They were just balls of light and they were running around and I could see them. And I can remember seeing the trees and the water and everything had like this glow to it. I can remember the trees had like this white and golden glow. It was beautiful. I can still see the outline of it. And I was like, where am I? What is going on? Am I dreaming? Am I still dreaming? Did I go to sleep on the bank? Am I dreaming? I didn't know what was happening. And the folks there I kept saying, where am I? What happened? Where am I? What happened? And I remember I was cold and I remember that I all of a sudden could feel people around me and what they were thinking and feeling and more of sense of what they were feeling. And the feeling I got, they were all panicking. I mean, completely in panic mode. And I didn't understand why, but it was not a great feeling. And I didn't want that feeling of panicking. But there was a woman, her name was Carol, and she had a very distinct voice. And I knew her from years back. And she was holding me up because I could breathe better. And she had a very soft, unique voice. And she was very calming. And so I just concentrated on her. All the guys would come up and they'd be, Ken, how many fingers am I holding up? And all I could see was like the white light. I couldn't see their fingers. I'm like, so they thought something was wrong with me because I couldn't respond how many fingers I'm holding up, But I just concentrated on her voice. And when I came back in my body, what happened before that, while I was off away in the void, was that the folks on shore had now witnessed that I had stopped making any effort to keep my head above water. And they noticed that I was just being flipped and tumbled like a rag doll. And they realized that it was no longer a rescue, but more like they had to go in and do a body recovery now. And so they were getting these two kayakers prepared to go in there to retrieve the body. They had this gear they could attach a rope to and then go in there and try to grab the body. And so they were doing all that. People were trying to figure out how to do that. And there's this other fellow who I didn't know, and his name was David. Later to find out he was very religious. And something told him to throw the throw rope one more time. And, he's just thinking, well, he's unconscious. There's no way he's going to grab this. Why am I throwing it? But something just told him to throw it one more time. So before he threw it, he said a prayer, please, Jesus, help this man. And he threw that throw rope in and everybody saw it throw and think, why is he throwing it? They stopped throwing it a while ago and he threw it in and it disappeared. But then it came rising out of the water with me holding it onto the rope. And everybody said that when they witnessed it, they felt like they had just witnessed a miracle, like divine intervention, which it was. I mean, for that to happen is like a miracle. So that's how I got to shore. And when I got to shore, when they finally started pulling me in, they thought maybe he is conscious. Maybe we just have to pull it gently. So they started pulling gently, but even then I didn't do my head above water. And then my friend Frank jumped in to grab my body first, and he turned me over and he said, "Ken, you were face of the dead man. You were lifeless. You were gray." And he just lost it. He just started bawling. They got my body on the shore, and these David and these other fellas, there were 6 of them from Atlanta, and they had just taken a CPR course like a month or 2 before, thinking it might be helpful. Well, they immediately checked for a pulse. They couldn't find a pulse. I wasn't breathing, so they immediately started CPR. And as they're doing CPR, my friend Frank is losing it, and somebody said, "Is anybody here a doctor?" And Frank said, "Yeah, the guy we're paddling with, Richard, a friend of ours, he was paddling with me. He's an ER doctor, but he went after my boat, so he was downriver getting my gear." And so Frank ran down there, got him, brought him back up, and when he got there, they hadn't cut my dry top. I had a dry top on because the water was cold. You don't wear a wetsuit. You want to stay dry. So he cut that, and he checked for a pulse. Couldn't find one on my wrist, but he checked this other place that I guess doctors know where to check. If there is a pulse, they might find it there. And he said he felt like he detected that my heart was still beating, barely, like hardly noticeable. And with that, just him knowing that, he just said, "Stop doing the compressions. Let's just do mouth to mouth." So they did mouth to mouth for like the next 10, 12 minutes or something like that. And in the meantime, David was doing the mouth to mouth. And once again, he felt the urge to stop and let somebody take over because he was doing it for quite a while. And he knelt next to me and he said a prayer and he said, "Jesus, please let this man live." And he said, as soon as he said that prayer, I went "Blah!" like that. I mean, he said I just went in convulsions, and, and then I just started breathing on my own. So the synchronicity and the miracles of those prayers and everything just lined up. And anyway, then me being there and Richard, they had needed me to get out of the river, to get out of there, but I was in a gorge. I was like 2 or 3 miles down the gorge, and it would have been really hard for me to get out because at that time, I couldn't walk. I couldn't even lift up my pinky, my hands. I was so weak. But a rafting company happened to be there with a walkie-talkie, and this is 96, so there wasn't cell phones. So they just happened to be there, and they said, "Can you help?" So they radioed back to base. They got a hold of the medical establishment. They met the paramedics at the river. The paramedics, uh, they ferried him across. They ran down the railroad tracks, down the gorge, got to me. About 45 minutes later, they put oxygen. They shot me up with something. And in the meantime, the paramedics or the radioed back to base. The state police asked if there's something they could help. And Richard said, "Well, if you can get anybody down here, that would be helpful, like a helicopter rescue." And the state police said, "Well, we got a guy here that says he thinks he can do it." He was a vet. And none of the other guys, he was an older gentleman, and the other guys said, "There's no way I'm going down in that gorge. It's too dangerous." But this vet said, "Nah, I've done this." So having that vet on that day was another miracle. And so that person ended up flying down, landing on a rock in the middle of the river next to me and throwing me in the helicopter and sending me off to the hospital where I spent a week recovering.
Wow.
So, and during that week, the veil felt really thin. Like the room would disappear and I'd be looking at a jungle, or the floor, I'd be looking at like a canyon. And my wife at the time, she came up the next day to be with me and my mom. I mean, even though I was leaving my wife and we were separating, we still love each other completely. Actually, she's my neighbor and she's one of my best friends and I love her dearly. And So it's not like, oh, I hate her or whatever. No, we love each other very dearly, and I love the lessons we both learned from each other. Anyway, she was there, and when I was telling her my experience and telling her the room's changing, can't you see this and this, she just had a lot of fear, like, oh my God, he's gone crazy. you know, he's lack of oxygen now. He's brain dead. He's not going to be the same. I feel so sorry for him. And and even the doctors are like saying, "Oh, that experience you had is just because of lack of oxygen. It wasn't really real. And if you need some therapy or something, we can recommend that." And so, after a few days of that, I just kind of shut it down. Just like shut it down because it was scaring the mess of them.
Yeah. I
Questions?
don't think that's an uncommon response,
Yeah, not at
No,
all.
it
No.
isn't.
especially back in 1996. I had much the same response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mine.
Yeah. I have a couple of questions. The voice that you heard, and you said they called themselves a we. Do
Yes.
you have any idea who that voice belongs to?
I've been asked this question many times, and I don't feel it's important for me to know. I feel like what is important is that it was the voice of truth and the voice of love. And that's all I need to know. I mean, so many times we want to know things when we don't really need to know. I don't really need to know who it was or if it was a male voice, masculine.
Okay.
So, but I don't know who it was.
How long was it before you were able to start talking about this openly? And what has your integration process been right after the event and up until now?
After my event, I was severely depressed. I had just decided that I was moving out west and I was going to go live my life that I wanted to. And I worked for myself and on construction. So, the month before or 2 months before, I told everybody that I wasn't taking any more work. By This was in October, and by December, I was going to leave where I was living in Tallahassee. And I was going to move out west. So I had stopped taking work and I was just finishing up the jobs I had. So I was depressed in the fact that I didn't want to be here. I wanted to be back there. And I didn't know what my purpose was. They said I had to come back for whatever reason. I had things I still had to do. I didn't know what that was. And I just felt like, I was just in anguish and depressed is the feeling I had. And feeling sorry for myself. And it wasn't till about 8 months later, maybe, I had an out of body again. And this time I decided to do it. And I went out of my body and I went to these places, but then I found myself looking back at the earth and I thought once again, oh, I don't have to be there anymore. I could go. I'm out of my body. I don't need to be back there. And once I had that thought, I went back and I started to have my life review again. The same way. I viewed it the same way. And this time though, I'm like, yeah, I know what's coming. I know it's coming, So I kind of raced through the review because I knew that I could choose to leave after that review. And so after the review, I said, yeah, I had a good life. I'm ready to go. And so I, this time I turned around from the earth. I was looking at the earth like the earth was this giant marble in front of me. And I turned around and there was the white light, the tunnel, the brightness, and it was bright, but you could see it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm heading towards the light. And as I'm heading towards the light, I could feel more love coming in it to me, just engulfing me with love. And I remember, oh man, I made the right decision. It was just I had to wait 8 months to experience this. And I could see on each my left and right, I could see other beings leaving the earth also. And they looked like little white tadpoles and they were squiggling. And we were all leaving and heading towards the light. And we were all connected. Every one of us was connected. And the feeling I got, I could still hear them. We were all just giddy. like little kids in a candy store, just so giddy. That's the best word I could describe as giddiness. And we're heading towards the light, and I'm about to get to the light and I go in, and the same voice said, "No, it's not your time. You have to go back." And I said, "But I don't want to go back this time because I remember my Ken." And they said, "No, you have to. There's still things you have to do." And I said, "But I don't want to go." And then the voice said, "Well, kind of." They said, "Don't worry, you'll make this journey again." Like, and I said, "You sure?" And and they said, "Yes, you'll make." And I remember turning back, looking at the earth, and I remember turning around and go, "You sure?" And they go, "Yes, you will make this journey again." And then I was back in my body. And so that didn't help me in the sense of getting out of depression. That just like, what am I supposed to do? And, I started to kind of talk about my experiences, but I just found that people weren't really that interested in it, like the meaning behind it. They were just more interested in sensationalism. And a lot of people just didn't really believe it. They just thought it was a great dream, a great, So, and instead of being like taking on that criticism and stuff that I had to deal with, I just shut all that down. And so I didn't want to talk about it. And it wasn't until like 2 years ago that I finally had like an awakening where I did want to talk about it. And and now I'm talking to you about it. And and some of the things that I realized that having that accident kept me to stay in Tallahassee. And that's where I needed to stay. I needed to stay in Tallahassee. It's not where I wanted to be because all the things that I love doing, climbing, snowboarding, kayaking, backpacking, you know, all these things that I love doing are, not in Tallahassee. I mean, they are, but not the extreme sport things that I like doing. Yeah, there's kayaking there, but it's flat water. It's not white water. There's no climbing. There's no snowboarding. So I really didn't want to stay in Tallahassee because I just didn't want to drive all those distance to do those things. It was getting tiring to drive all the time. But I was meant to stay there. And because I had that experience, it kept me there. And it wasn't until years later why I realized why I needed to stay there. One, I fell in love with a new woman, and she was always like trying to get me to tell my story, and I would get mad at her. I would say, "Don't you ever do that again. Don't you ever bring up that again to anybody that I had a near death experience and put me on the spot like that." I mean, I would just like get really, really mad at her. And the other thing is I brought my parents down for the last 7 years of their life and we took care of them, which that wouldn't have happened. And then also I became a father to a boy that his natural born father pretty much abandoned him at an early age, and I became his father. And I consider him my son, he considers me dad. And without that love, I don't know what would have happened in his world. So those two things alone were such a blessing that I didn't know was there.
That's profound. Um, I just have a curiosity. So I've heard you mention a voice speaking to you during your NDE and telling you that you had an earthly experience and need to let go of things that you're holding on to. And then when you said that, you flashed back to an out of body experience that you had when you were younger, where they showed you your true essence of who you are and that you were light. But when they showed you that light, you had some dark spots and blackness around it and a black crack that you had mentioned. And the voice said that you need to get rid of those. And then as you started getting rid of them, they were fears and things that you were holding on to. You expanded and expanded, and you felt that you were one with the universe. So the question would be, are we all made of light with black and dark spots that we need to get rid of to merge back with the universe? And is that the reason we reincarnate?
I think I understand what you're saying. Our true nature is not the spots. Our true nature is our light. That's who we are. It's just that we have, at least for me, those dark spots were things that I believed, where I don't allow the light to shine through. The light's there. We just hold on to these things that we think are true. We think they're true about ourselves. And when we hold on to that, what it does is it doesn't allow the light to shine fully out. The light's there. It's never not there. And so it's just, for me, it was to learn how to let go of those things that I hold on to. And it could be, you know, guilt, shame, criticism, belief that I have to look at this way and not that way, or this is good, that's bad, this is bad, that's good, good and evil, and judge. So for me, it's those spots are not who we are. It's just things that are experiences that we've had to help us understand ourselves, but we haven't let go of them.
Yeah. So I'm not sure what your take on reincarnation is, but if there is such a thing as reincarnation, would that mean that each time we come back into existence, into a body, into another life, are we bringing those dark spots with us? And maybe our journey here next time would be to fill those with light. That we've carried those little dark spots over with us into another life. And the journey is to really heal those dark spots.
Do I believe in reincarnation, or do I understand? Yeah, I don't believe it. I know it.
Yeah.
When I was shown that white light, one of the things before I got there, the universe wanted to make sure that that was my true intention. So it tempted me into look at other past lives I had. So in order to tempt me to see if I really was true in my intent of wanting to know, I entered this long hallway. And in that hallway were these rooms, like an archway. And above the archway was like a head of a person. And there was like on each side of this hallway, and it was a long hallway, winding back and forth. And there was rooms on each side, boom, 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 and there was heads on each side. And I remember walking down the hallway and thinking, wow, this is strange. I got to one head that I looked up and it flashed, and I remember, wow, I was that person.
Mhm.
And at any point, I could open that door and relive that life if I wanted to. But there was a lot of them. I mean, and at a split second, I was tempted to go into that life of that person. It was a man with a beard, and he had really like dark hair. It was just his face. And I was tempted to go see what that life was like. But I knew that I wanted to know who I was. And these were just like, it felt like they were just tempting me to see
Mm.
if I really wanted that. So, and I've had other experiences of past life things. And I think to your question is, you know, coming here, we learn. We come here to learn. And, um, and so whatever we want to learn, we're given those opportunities. And if we had a previous life where we were meant to learn this thing and we didn't learn it, we're given another chance to come back and try to figure it out. And we get as many chances as we want, I think. Um, so it's kind of like, okay, I'm no longer on this earthly plan. I let go of those things. Okay, now I want to go back to earth and put on, oh, it's almost like you put on a cloth. I want to put on that cloth that has the little holes in it and re-experience all these things that I didn't figure out before,
Yeah.
and get to work on them so that you can let go of them. I guess that would be the best analogy I can think of
Yeah.
at this point, what I'm thinking.
Yeah. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think my thought process was, so if we have these dark spots that the learning, maybe the healing for those dark spots, then I'm wondering if we reincarnate with these dark spots and we're filling them up as we're learning, as we're healing them, then I'm wondering, once those are all healed, is that enlightenment? Is that the emergence back with consciousness? Or is that a conversation for another day?
I'll break it to you gently. We already
Okay.
are enlightened.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, there's nothing we have to do. It's just we get to experience. We get to experience, you know? And it's like we already are love. We are love. That light is the love. We are that spark of divinity. We are that divinity. We are God, basically. It's
Yeah.
like we think of ourselves as too small, you know, and we don't think of ourselves as God, our everything. We think of ourselves as these, little person, and I'm only a little person, but they're greater than me, or God's greater than me, and we think of ourselves as separate. There's a there's a great Rumi quote. I think it goes something like, "You are not. Don't think of yourself as the drop in the ocean, but think of yourself as the ocean in that drop." Something like that.
Yeah. It's beautiful. You mentioned that you started talking about this more openly after an awakening that you had. So it sounds like maybe that was a pivot point or a catalyst. Um, what are some of the, and I've heard you speak before, you have some very interesting insights about consciousness and some of these concepts that you came out from these experience with. And I'd love it if you'd share some of the important ones. Some important insights about, like, for example, like remembering who we really are.
Yeah, my 2 years ago, I had what I call like a spiritual meltdown. Uh, I realized that I was just fluttering by my life and not really putting both feet in this experience and not fully experiencing this, not really wanting to be here, but being here. And so I didn't want to really look at my fears, my beliefs. I just wanted to get done with this life so I could get out of here. And and then in that awakening, it was shown you can't. I can no longer do that anymore. I have to face it. And so for a few months, man, it was, it was pure anguish. I mean, pure anguish. I couldn't sleep. I was driving myself crazy. I was feeling all these feelings of guilt and shame and unworthiness and all these things bubbling up. And but the universe kept coming back to me and showing me that that's great. What a wonderful opportunity I had. And now I don't look at it as like when I have a hardship with my wife or anybody, I look at it as a wonderful opportunity where I get to choose how I want to react to it. I get to choose. No one else chooses. And so if I want to choose being angry and upset, well, then I can be choosing anger and upset. But if I want to choose love and acceptance and kindness, I can also choose that. And that just, it's not that I look forward to fears and anxieties, but I look at it in a way like, what a beautiful blessing for me to have an opportunity to choose love over fear. And then when I get to do that, my quality of being just becomes more joyful, more peaceful. Um, and then I find myself just like I had an I had an out of body experience a few weeks ago where one of my guides came to me and the guide was kind of saying, and this guy's kind of got a red beard and he's big, tall, he's big, burly man. And he's like, "Ah, you're happy, are you? I mean, he's like kind of egging me on. Are you happy? Are you happy?" And then I said, "Yes." He goes, "Why are you happy?" And I looked at him, I said, "Just because, just because." And then his face from going like, "Arr," he smiled and he says, he just shook his head. "You're getting it. You're getting it." And it's the way, the being kind, being loving, not just acting, but being kind. I'm happy, I'm joyful, just being. There's no reason for me to be happy and joyful, just other than being. So that's what I'm working towards. And it's not that I feel that every day, no, but there are moments I feel it and there are moments when I don't. But that's okay.
It's beautiful.
I really like that because um, I like this idea of being consciously aware that we don't have to be hijacked by our emotions. That if we step back far enough and just become an observer rather than a reactor, right? Being responsible and making our own choices about how we want to respond to something rather than reacting. And I thought maybe this was an age thing. um, after you've had enough conflict in your life and you get really to the, core of it, you just don't want it anymore. And step into responsibility for ourselves. Um, I'm just wondering, I think that can be taught as well and learned. When you're unhappy enough, when you've had enough suffering, here's an option, right? We
Mhm.
don't have to attach ourselves to every feeling. Um, and uh, yeah, that's where my heart lies, is really getting to the core of that and letting people know that we don't have to, we are a participant in our lives. We do have choices. And if you're really in the thick of it and you want to make a change, that is an option for us.
You're creating the suffering.
Yeah, exactly. And you're also the solution, right?
Yeah. The boy that I helped raised, he had his appendicitis taken out around 5 or 6, and his mom was feeling so bad because she was crying because she didn't wanna see her son suffer. And
Yeah.
so he was really, I mean, he was in extreme pain, and he told his mom, he said, "Mom, I'm not suffering. I'm just in pain."
Oh,
Beautiful.
it's a
Me
beautiful approach.
Yeah, just pain.
Bless his soul.
Yeah.
What an advanced being. How old is this child now?
Uh, he's he's dealt with a lot of issues, especially with drugs and addiction. Um, he's struggling, but you know, uh, I'm there to love him no matter what.
Yeah, how old is he now?
He's 22.
Yeah, he's a sensitive soul. Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
very sensitive, he very in tune with other people's feelings.
Mm-hmm.
But he's struggling like we all struggle. It's just trying to remember that we aren't those struggles. We created those struggles.
When you had your awakening and when you started speaking out a little bit more publicly about this, did you have certain resources that helped you with the integration? Like, because I mean, these are experiences, are big experiences, and they can be confusing for people, right? How did you navigate that? Did you seek, help from counselors or spiritual teachers or self-study? I think it's important for our audience to know that this is a big deal.
Yeah, I wanted help, and I was asking for help and asking for guidance because I knew I couldn't do it on my own. And within about a week maybe after this, when I was in the thick of it, something said to go start listening to NDE stories. And I didn't even know they were out there. I mean, literally, I just wanted to keep my, I didn't want to think about my MD, didn't want to think about it at all, because it would just bring up the feeling that I wanted not to be here. I would only go there when I felt like I needed it, like if I had a really hard struggle. I would go back to that experience to give me a better perspective of what was happening so that I could deal with my struggles and stuff. But at this point, none of that was helping. Anyway, so I went and I looked up an NDE story and I was like, oh, wow, there's a bunch of them here. So I listened to one or two or three that day. They were nice. And then the next day I came back and now there was like, I mean, hundreds of them, hundreds of them. And I'm like, wow, I didn't know they all this. And so I asked my spirit guides, I said, which one do I need to listen to? So I said, I'm just going to scroll through them. And when when something catches my eye or tells me to stop, I'll stop. So I'm scrolling through, not that one, not that one. And I get about to the eighth one, and the voice said, go back to that fifth one you saw. Go listen to that person. And I'm like, that person? That person looks like comes out of a motorcycle gang. It looks like he's rough. What could he possibly tell me that I don't already know? Or whatever. So I went back and I crossed my arms thinking, okay, I'm going to do what you say. I'm going to listen to this person and hear what they have to say, and then I'll be on my way. And as I started listening to that person, I immediately recognized almost within a few minutes that that this person was speaking the truth for me. Now, it may not be for everyone, but it was for me. Something in that was speaking to me. I didn't know what it was. I just knew that. So I listened to that and I knew I needed to buy his book and I needed to talk to him. So I immediately bought his book, read his book, and set up a session with him. And then in all that, he also talked about ions.
Mhm.
And so then this was like December, January, and I had my session with him in January. And then I found out about ions, which I never knew existed. I don't know if people know what that is, but International Study of Near Death or International Association of Near Death Studies.
Yes.
And they have a convention every year, conference, not a convention, conference. So I ended up going to that conference. And then I ended up this person started an organization called Living God's Light, a nonprofit. And now I ended up being involved in that organization. And I'm helping people come together and share their experiences in a place that's safe and open for them to share and to give themselves a voice like I didn't have. Uh, so, so right now I do every Tuesday, I do an event at 2:00 Eastern time, and it's through the Living God's Light website. So, all these things that I didn't know. I'd be like 2 years ago, if you told me I was doing this, I would have said no. But it's like it just guided me that way,
Yep.
but not knowing where it's going to go. So,
Yeah, the universal intelligence, right? And then when we're in the present moment and we're being aware and we follow those breadcrumbs and we're led in just naturally in the direction that is our purpose, and that's just such a beautiful thing.
anyway, his name is Vinny Toll.
Okay,
All
okay,
right.
fantastic, fantastic.
Yep,
That's
Vinny.
great. Um, I often talk about that, just following the prompts, the breadcrumbs. and how sometimes if we just let go of things, I have a tendency to hold on to things tightly, just naturally at times, and kind of like clenching your teeth, and then you realize, oh, hey, wait a minute, I'm like holding on way too tight to this. I'm really invested into this story, and it's funny because as soon as you loosen up, lighten up, it's incredible the things that you become aware of on that path. It's incredible.
Yeah, we're all getting so bombarded by uh, the phones, the news,
Yeah.
everybody's anxieties, um, so that we can't really hear and listen and see and appreciate what's there in front of us. That
Yeah.
that they're offering us all these great insights and understanding and acknowledgments. Uh, so take the time. And for me, like 2 years ago, if you said I was going to meditate, I would have said, "There's no way."
Yeah.
Uh, I couldn't sit still for like 5 minutes. I'm a real active person,
Yeah.
and um, but now I just find myself meditating, not because I have to. I just find myself doing it because it's just part of. Uh, there's
Yeah.
no
Yeah.
have tos. It just feels like that's the right thing to do for me. You know.
Beautiful. For any of our audience that has experienced a recent near-death experience, what wisdom or what direction could you point them in for support or for help integrating their process? Like, what advice would you give?
Seek out ions.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a really good resource, and they're very, very supportive. And you'll find that they are a family you didn't realize you had, a community of folks that like when I went, I realized, wow, this is the family I always wanted, you
Hmm.
know?
I've heard that time and time again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. There's a different feel there, and you just have to experience it to really understand it more. But it is. I would recommend them they reach out to Ions.
Which leads me to the question, how can our listeners find you? How could they get in contact with you, Ken, if they have any questions or just want to see your work?
I'm leaving my email with you, and
Okay.
they can also go on Living God's Light website, and it's a nonprofit, and you can see if I'm hosting an event, and you can join for free. Um, Living God's Light. They also have a Discord channel on there that's set up just for Living God's Light members, and you can contact me there.
Wonderful. We'll be sure and include that in our notes.
Yeah, thank you.
And thanks so much for stepping into this space with us, you and our listeners. And for our listeners, if you feel nourished or inspired by The Veil Between Lives, please subscribe, like, share, comment, or leave a review. It helps these conversations reach the souls meant to find them.
Thanks so much for joining us, Ken.
Thank you so much. Thank you.